Hello peoples, this will be my last video about the Snyder Cut. It's just always so fun, once you have a comic book genre thing, and you have to go through the videos of it, like if there's a Marvel movie, a DCEU, or whatever. It's always fun, you can make multiple videos about it, and once you do the ranking video, that means like, okay, this movie's time is done, okay, it's on to whatever's next. So, last Snyder Cut video, and yeah. Anyways, this will be the DCEU ranked, so this will include the Snyder Cut, just because it deserves to be ranked among these, I think. So yeah, there are 10 DCEU entries at the moment, and so let's just get into them. Coming in at number 10 is Suicide Squad. I enjoy like the first 20 minutes or so of this movie. Those 20 minutes aren't perfect, but the last hour and a half or 2 hours of that movie is just extremely, I can't get through it. It's just another murky comic book movie with a skybeam and generic villain that takes place at night with shaky cam action. Harley Quinn's cool. And that's really the only amazing thing about this movie, sadly. Suicide Squad, like I said, everyone at the time had extremely high hopes for this movie, and to see it crumple on itself is just extremely sad. But yeah, Suicide Squad, the fan base has never been more disappointed when it comes to a DC Comics movie, and I think this is like the primary example of what comic book movies should not be. Coming in at number 9 is Justice League 2017. This movie is just, it's even lower now knowing more about the production and seeing the Snyder Cut and just, knowing where it is and what they did to completely butcher this movie. Storylines that did not need to be cut, but they cut just for cutting it. And I know they said, oh, it has to be under 2 hours, but they could have tacked on another 5 minutes just to give Flash that amazing sequence that he has in the Snyder Cut. I'm not gonna say, but in the third act where he has that amazing thing happen, and it's just, they filmed it and all that, and it's just frustrating. This movie is it's just a frustrating watch at this point. It's not the worst movie in the world. It really isn't, but it's definitely not the most it's just an extremely mediocre DCEU entry. But the sad thing is about this movie is now when we have literally a movie now in the DCEU that degrades everything we don't like about this movie and shows you how it could have even been better. Plus, there's some, I'm not the biggest fan of this musical score. I'm one of those people that believes the musical score is half the experience. And I absolutely hated this musical score. It just does not match the theme of the other movies. This movie could have just, for me personally, I think this movie could have been mediocre if the score was what we got from the other movies. But when I have the original cheesy Superman thing blasting at me when I'm used to hearing Hans Zimmer, it just throws me off a little bit. But that's not the only thing that throws me off. It's just, you could tell who filmed what at this point. It's a frustrating watch knowing who filmed what. And Justice League, there's comedy that doesn't work here. Steppenwolf is just extraordinarily terrible here. And, yeah, it's just a lot of movies stuffed into one, and of course it gets better. But anyways, coming in at number 8 is probably a very unpopular opinion of mine, and that is Aquaman. The cheesiness does not work for me. I actually do need to watch this movie again now, seeing the Snyder Cut, and give it another chance, because with the experience with the Snyder Cut, I might get more enjoyment out of this. And that is because Wonder Woman, I didn't hate Wonder Woman 1984. I like the movie. But the reason why the cheesiness worked is because we had a serious build-up, but when you put a serious character in a cheesy movie, it really works, I think. But we barely got, with the cluster that Justice League was, we still didn't really know Aquaman too well. Now that I do know him a little bit better through the Snyder Cut, and they actually set up the movie, I might like Aquaman more, because I take him seriously now, considering the Snyder Cut. And like I said, if I take a serious character, put him in a cheesy movie, it could really work. So I do want to give Aquaman another chance with the viewing of Zack Snyder's Justice League. But I can't guarantee you that my opinion will change, because it's not just the cheesy elements of Aquaman I don't like. There's It suffers from villain overload, a terrible script with many plot holes. Everyone just every action sequence just starts off with an explosion, taking you out of a moment. But the best thing about this is definitely James Wan's directing, especially when it comes to the action sequence and the creative eye for it. That's definitely the best part about Aquaman. With my number 6 and 7, I enjoy number 6 more, even though number 7's technically the better movie. I have number 7. I gave number 7 a higher score than number 6, but I just get more out of number 6, so that's why I switched them up. Coming in at number 7 is Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One, Harley Quinn. It's an okay movie. It's just at the end of the day, it doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't necessarily feel like, oh, this is a DCEU movie. It just feels like a season 8 episode of The Office. That's good. It's like kind of like Lost, and this is what this movie kind of feels like. There are some great elements. Ewan McGregor in this movie is great. Margot Robbie's great. The whole cast does a decent job. It's just, the movie itself is near the bland side. It does go for that Deadpool feel, which I can appreciate. It's just there's but I'm not the biggest fan of Deadpool itself, the first movie. I do like it, don't get me wrong. It's just I don't like the going back and forth timeline thing, and this movie definitely does hug on that a little bit. And that particularly, especially one, they copied it, and two, I don't like it in the first place. It really did bother me, this movie. But there isn't anything too terrible about this movie. They didn't get anything terribly wrong, but it's just not one of my favorites. I don't see myself going back to this. It's just not the most rewatchable one out of all of them. And number 6, speaking about rewatchability and how it could probably save a movie, is Batman vs. Superman, the Ultimate Edition. Well, Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition, or whatever, or Dawn of Ultimate, or Justice of Edition. Anyways, this movie, Birds of Prey is the better movie, but I have found myself rewatching Batman vs. Superman more, getting something different about it every time. Every single time I watch this, I get something different out of it. One time I watched it and I get like the opening scene, I really loved it, and that's what I got out of it. There's one scene, and another time I watched it, there was something else where I thought everything else was but there's this one scene where I absolutely loved it. So it really depends on which viewing, on my view of this movie. But overall, as my take as a whole has stayed the same. Half of this I love, absolutely love. Some of this I absolutely hate. And I did give this movie about a 5.1 just because the stuff I liked just so slightly, overtakes the, bad. But I don't think this is necessarily a good movie either. But what keeps it afloat for me is the rewatchability of it and how you're able to get something different out of it. Many times in Zack Snyder's very symbolic, cinematography that they do a lot of, because there's a lot of genius elements in this production. It's just, it's the suffering of trying to build up a Justice League movie where you've only had Man of Steel. And this movie could have worked. It's just Batman vs. Superman is good. Dawn of Justice is not so good. I don't like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I've never liked him as Lex Luthor. And he bothers me still. Like, he only had one scene in the Snyder Cut, but still, it really did bother me. But, I don't like, in the stuff that the stuff Lex Luthor introduces, like Doomsday, doesn't work. Like, Wonder Woman kind of having a cameo is fine, and you can set up things. It's just, it was just overload. And the Ultimate Edition did help, but I still think there's problems there. So, yeah. Coming in at number 5 is Wonder Woman 1984. This movie's plot is still not the best, but there is a lot of heart and there is an emotional core, and it has one of the most impactful scenes of the DCEU, where she has to say goodbye to Steve for the second time. When this movie, like people say, when this movie soars, it soars high. And when this movie gets bad, it does have problems, but none of it necessarily gets to the point where I'm like, I hate this. Like probably the biggest letdown in this movie was the fight between Cheetah and Wonder Woman, and probably the overall arc of Cheetah as a whole, I'm not the biggest fan of. But like I said, this movie has a strong emotional core. Wonder Woman, it's definitely a new take on Wonder Woman, And we never really quite had a DC or kind of a comic book movie like this, but we've never had a look of Wonder Woman like this in a whole new light. I enjoy the cheesy 80s elements of it. It's just I know the script can really boggle it down, but I can sit down and like this movie if I want to. I can't really look at it from a critical standpoint because then I kind of goes down for me. But if I sit down and want to watch a Wonder Woman movie, this is perfectly fine and I can enjoy it. Coming in at number 4 is Wonder Woman, the first one. Um, I've never quite called this just the DCEU masterpiece like some other people have, but it's still a great movie. Don't get me wrong. It's just, everyone has that same problem with the third act where it becomes all video game like. And like that third act can be enjoyed if you just think about it without context, but you really shouldn't have to think about it without context to enjoy something because then, of course, that's the problem. But of course, this is the introduction to Wonder Woman, and at the time when this movie was released, this was the second best DCEU movie. But yeah, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman was fantastic as an origin itself. It did a really good job setting that up. Chris Pine was great. There's some great comedy with fish out of water scenes, and the plot as a whole, as it progresses up until the third act, is really intriguing and really good. The sequence where she goes out to the no man's land. Sorry, I have Oscars on the brain. But when she goes out to no man's land, and that whole entire sequence will be iconic and will probably be like an Avengers Assemble moment for the rest of comic book history. Wonder Woman definitely gets its foot in the game when it comes to female-led superheroes, and it's definitely an inspiring story. Coming in at number 3 is Man of Steel. I've always really enjoyed this movie. My opinion of it has went down just ever so slightly, but I still really, really enjoy it. There is, of course, the action can be a little bit much, but it has enough Snyder visuals to kind of hold it up. And even though the CG in this third act can be a little obvious, but it's still kind of fun, turn your brain off popcorn movie. But yeah, this movie at the end of the day, it's just it's a really fun popcorn movie. It's a Superman movie, but it's kind of different. It has that dark take that I really enjoy. But you guys have to remember this Superman, even though I'm the biggest fan of Henry Cavill playing the role of Superman, he's basically the Superman I grew up with because I haven't really watched too many Superman movies. So Henry Cavill was basically my childhood Superman. And so there's somewhat of an attachment there, even though I'm really not the biggest fan of Henry Cavill as Superman. But whether I like it or not, he's my childhood Superman. But yeah, he does a decent job. I don't necessarily... He's almost too Mr. Perfect, even though the script doesn't really portray it that way. It's like Henry Cavill's almost fighting the script for what Superman's supposed to be. But at the end of the day, there's some really good visuals here, a really good basically ending conclusion. The whole entire scene where Martha says to Clark, he saw it, Clark, he saw it, and then you get that flashback sequence where he's running with the dog with the cape, and Jonathan's watching it. It just gets me every time. It really does. And I know there's people out there that don't like the flashback sequences. I actually really enjoy that. Like, love the flashback sequences. The opening scene in Krypton, the scenes where Clark, I don't know what to call him anymore, Kal-El or Clark, where Clark is in school having problems with these powers. It's just all really intriguing to me, and I've always enjoyed watching that. But yeah, Man of Steel is a really fun movie. There's technically on paper it's not the best, but for enjoyment value it really is up there. Coming in at number 2 is Shazam. The reason why I like this movie so much is because, one, how relatable the story is to me. It's about a kid, he needs to find his mom. My mom passed away, and so I've always been, when I was little, so I've always been trying to find out not like find out who she is because I have people telling me my whole life, but almost because, when people pass, people always try to paint a picture of what that person is, but you never necessarily feel like you got it. So the search for Billy Batson's mom in this movie, and considering that when this movie came out, we were relatively the same age, it really did impact me, this story, quite a bit, and the fact that the whole entire conclusion and the message at the end really hits home. The villain in this movie, Mark Strong as whoever, bald villain number 55, I still don't care for, but at the end of the day, it's a movie about family. It's a fun lighthearted superhero movie, and even though like the third act with the The Seven Deadly Sins, I'm not the biggest fan of all that. But at the end of the day, it does have that emotional core that I want from a superhero movie. Get Shazam right, and it's really relatable to me. And coming in at number one is everyone's, well, I'm assuming this is going to be everyone's number one for now on, and that is Zack Snyder's Justice League. I am, like I've said it a million times, and I'm going to say it again. Overall, as a whole, I don't like Batman versus Superman. Even though it's still number 6 on the list, it's because I watch it and I get something different out of it every time. Like I said, it's a 5.1. 5.1 isn't that good, but it's like getting a 51 on a test. But still, Zack Snyder's Justice League takes Snyder's strengths, puts them in there. The complaints people had about his previous movies, all pretty much gone. And it's a 4-hour-long, super extended edition that has an emotional heart, soul, characters, good villain. What else is there to want? It has the Snyder visuals. It's not his darkest movie, Man of Steel, and well, I'd say this and Man of Steel are about the same. But Batman vs Superman is a lot darker tonally than this. But it gets that right balance where I think DC fans want it. There's a lot of great hints here and there. You got that nightmare sequence that's just amazing. Of course, that's not until like the last 5 minutes, but there's a lot of great stuff here. It takes everything that we wanted from the Justice League 2017 movie, the stuff that we liked, he expanded on, and other stuff we didn't even know we wanted because we didn't see it, and it was just there, and it was amazing. The action in this movie is miles better than the original, and I don't want to spend this whole entire number one just saying how it's better than the original Justice League movie. It fleshes out its characters. It gets Barry Allen right. It gets Cyborg right. It gets Aquaman right. It gets Wonder Woman right. For the most part, it gets Batman right, and there's not much Superman in this movie, but it gets all those characters right. Steppenwolf is still not the best villain ever, but he definitely does what he needs to do for the movie that he's in. In a setup movie, he is a perfectly fine, passable villain. There's a lot more. There's just basically, people compared it to DC's Lord of the Rings, and I completely agree with that opinion. It's so epic, grand. By the time Superman comes back, when they introduce the idea, I get hyped up. When I watched Justice League 2017, I was like, okay, we're bringing Superman back. Okay, and it doesn't feel earned, but we're doing it. Everything in this movie that it builds to feels earned this time around. By the time Superman, we're about to bring Superman back, I'm like, yes, let's go. We're about to bring back Superman. Everything here feels earned. The runtime, it's 4 hours long. Yes, you could take maybe about half an hour, but I'd rather have that half an hour than not have it. Maybe the situation would be different if I saw this in theaters. But yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League, loved it. It's my favorite DCEU movie. So yeah, that's my ranking of the DCEU. Comment down below what your ranking is. I'm fairly curious. So yeah, anyways, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that, and adios.